Got it. Oh, I gotta acknowledge that, huh?
Got it.
Okay, we good to go, Josh?
Just one more moment.
Sure.
All right, you're all set.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, good evening, everybody. I keep getting this notification on my screen, but okay, got it. We're being recorded. I'm gonna go ahead and call this Bridgewater Town Council meeting to order. It is Tuesday, August 3rd. It is 7:01 p.m. I would ask that everyone that can please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag
to the flag of the United States of America,
to the
to the
republic
republic for which it
and
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
God,
under God,
Indivisible, with
justice
liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll announce that this meeting is being aired live and is recorded. Disclosure pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This meeting of the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater will be fully remote and accessible to the public through remote participation to the greatest extent possible. There will be no in-person attendance permitted. Citizens who wish to tune into the meeting may do so via Zoom or Facebook Live. We do have one condolence tonight to the family of David A. Anaki on behalf of the Town Council. Our condolences to the passing of David Anaki on July 25th, 2021. Mr. Anaki served in the United States Marine Corps during the Vietnam War. I'd like to now just take a moment of silence to recognize all those veterans and first responders who have passed. Okay, our first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting on July 13th, 2021. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion?
no, sir.
Okay, seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Counselor George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
yes,
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
I'll abstain.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood.
Yes.
Thank you. 6 in favor, 0 against.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, announcements from the president. I do have one brief announcement to advise fellow council members that we are going to be preparing the town manager's contract on work performance evaluation. It is his third year of his 3-year contract. On September 1st, every council member will receive an evaluation form from the council clerk. It's imperative that we return this within a week's time frame to meet the parameters within the contract for performing the evaluation. And that's all I have. I'll next move to proclamations, which we have none. Next will be citizens open forum. I'll open it up for citizens open forum, asking that you just state your name and your street address. I would just remind people that during citizens open forum that we maintain a level of civility and do not call out individual members of the council or town employment. Do we see anyone that wishes to speak, Josh?
I have one person with their hand up. Let's see here.
Okay, I see David Frem, so I'm going to
Yep.
go with Mr. Frem, please. Mr. Frem, you're on mute.
I'm sorry about that. I would like to follow Jacqueline Hunt if possible. I'm representing the Bridgewater Disability Commission on her behalf.
David, who do you want to go after?
Jacqueline Hunt, if she's on.
Okay, understood.
Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like I have an MK Hunt that has her hand raised. If we go there, Josh.
Yes, she's speaking on my computer. Thank you.
Okay, Marilee Hunt, okay.
But
The
this
floor
is,
is yours.
this is Mrs. Jacqueline Hunt. Give him your name and your address.
My name is Jacqueline Hunt. I live at Waterford Village, and I've lived here for 5 years. Do you want me to speak
Just say
now?
what you want to say. Say-
Okay.
Yeah, 3 minutes. Just
Well,
say-
I have, I moved here 5 years ago. I sold my home in Norton, which Norton has no sidewalks. So I wanted to move to a town which has sidewalks. I am disabled. I walk with a 4-wheel rollator walker and oxygen. And the best exercise for me is walking. That's what my doctors tell me. So I walk the streets of Bridgewater every day. I walk 3 to 5 miles a day. The first 2 years I was here, I walk Plymouth Street, Spring Street to go to Roche Brothers, or straight Plymouth Street, Summer Street to go to either CVS or Walgreens. The first 2 years, I can't even count. I've lost count of how many times I've fallen. The fire department EMTs know me by first name. They've picked me up. I've had sutures in my head, a broken wrist, sutures in my hand, or just concussions, a broken shoulder, a broken clavicle. It's repeated. And then non-serious injuries consistently from holes, potholes, cracks, crevices, deep crevices. And they're not noticeable to like the naked eye, because these crevices in the sidewalks are all growing grass. But when you are walking with a medical device, my walker has swivel wheels, and I've got a good walker with thick wheels. It hits that crevice. My walker goes over, and I go over with it every time. And pedestrians help me. Cars pull over, they get out, they help me. I've had strangers drive me home because I'm by myself. So after 2 years, I took this. I had it. I had a fit with myself. I said, I can't keep doing this. Something's got to be done. I took pictures. I walked my whole route, and I took pictures. I wrote a business letter, very nice letter. I called town hall, and I made an appointment with Michael Dutton. And he saw me. I walked into his office. He said, what are you here for? And I said, well, this is what I'm here for. It's for the sidewalks in this town. And I put the pictures in front of him, and I placed the letter in front of him. He did not look at the pictures. He did not look at my letter. He pushed them back at me and said, go to the highway department. I was appalled. I said, you're the town manager. He goes, yes, I am. I said, you get paid for your job, not me.
Mrs. Hunt, I just have to interrupt, and I apologize. You've gone well beyond the 3 minutes, and I've tried to acknowledge that, but I'm going to give you just 1 minute to try to wrap it up, please. I apologize. The time frame is short, but it's the rules that we have, okay?
Okay, so that's how that ended. I left them there and walked out in tears. What brings me here in front of you today, and also I didn't thank you for inviting me, is I went to Maine a few weeks ago for 11 days by myself, walked for 11 days without incident. No trip, no fall, nothing. I came home on a Saturday. Sunday morning, I got up and walked to Roche Brothers, got 1 bag of groceries, walked down Spring Street and fell.
just ask them, please fix the
And
sidewalk.
I just, I had a fit. And then I called Marilee the next morning, and that's what's brought me here today. I can't take it. My head can't take any more concussions. if the pictures of my skull on X-ray is a mess.
Just thank them for listening.
Mhm.
Just thank them for listening.
Okay.
Okay, your time is up. So just
Okay.
thank them for-
Yeah, unfortunately, we appreciate you coming here tonight and, describing for all of us the situation you've been dealing with on that road. And
I have a whole
some
poster
people that want
of
to speak
pictures
to that
that
tonight.
I've gone around and taken.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Do we have anybody
Something's gotta
else
be
in our
done.
citizens open forum that wishes to speak?
I have
I think
Rebecca
David Frim
Cordero.
wanted to- I believe David Frim actually wanted to go right after. I apologize. Go ahead, Mr. Frim.
I appreciate that. Dave Frim, Walnut Street in Bridgewater. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. The Bridgewater Disability Commission was asked to speak on behalf of Bridgewater resident Jacqueline Hunt. I and several members of the commission are here tonight in support of Mrs. Hunt. Mrs. Hunt had contacted the Disability Commission in early July and asked to be included on our July agenda. Jackie Hunt is a longtime resident of Bridgewater, presently living at Waterford Village. Despite several health issues, Mrs. Hunt enjoys daily walks on local sidewalks that include Plymouth Street and Spring Street. Walking with a walker, as she stated, she has found the area to be uneven, unkempt, cracked, and dangerous. She has stated to the Disability Commission she has fallen multiple times due to neglected sidewalks. The Plymouth Street sidewalk should represent the best of Bridgewater. Plymouth Street leads to the Bridgewater downtown. While the university is in session, they are heavily used by BSU students, by Waterford Village residents, by future residents of the new Dwell 85 apartments, by joggers, and by residents on their way to Roach Brothers Plaza or the downtown. These are among the most used sidewalks in the town. I personally parked my car and walked from Waterford Village to Walgreens and CVS on both sides of Plymouth Street and Spring Street towards Roach Brothers Plaza. There are indeed many cracks, potholes, uneven areas of the sidewalk. Plant and weed growth make the sidewalk difficult in multiple spots. Though Mrs. Hunt did state to us in the last several weeks, there has been some effort in trimming back some of the growth. The Bridgewater Disability Commission is part of the town's commitment to providing safe and equitable access for all citizens to our public spaces, and we support the shared obligation of the town, the commission, and the citizens of Bridgewater in identifying and addressing barriers to access and safety concerns. In this spirit, we request that you physically review the conditions of sidewalk and walk these sidewalks for yourself to better visualize and understand the effort that Mrs. Hunt and many other Bridgewater residents must go through to safely walk on these highly visible and utilized sidewalks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Frim. Anyone else for Citizens Open Forum? Mr. Domingo.
Hello there. I'm Vernon Domingo, 36 Saddle Drive, near the NIP. I just want to make some comment briefly about the idea that the town council is considering a policy for flying flags in our town. I think this is a very good and organized way of doing it so that we have a system in place, a system that honors democracy and the input from citizens in our town. So I'm very pleased that it's doing it so that we can broaden the idea of democracy and input. And I have high hopes for this, that the idea of citizens coming forward, communities coming forward on particular flags will broaden our community in significant ways. I'm reminded of President Lincoln saying that this will bring out our better angels. So I urge you to think about this very seriously. It's a good strategy for town to have an organized policy on flag raising and go for it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Ms. Cordero.
Sorry, Rebecca
worries.
Frescadero, Deerfield Drive. I also wanted to speak to what we keep calling the flag flying ordinance. It's easier than citing the number of it. In my attempt to try to speak articulately, I did a little bit of searching to try to find some wording that expressed what I was thinking. And I did find some wording in the Marin Independent Journal, which is actually out of Marin County, California. A couple of things that were said in that editorial were that flying the rainbow flag is a reinforcing sign of a community's humanity toward one and all. It represents human dignity and equality for all people, and it shows a community's moral and social compass. So thank you again for listening to me, and I'm hoping that ordinance will pass tonight.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming in. Mr. Hunt. Dr. Hunt, you're muted. Now we see your kitchen. Luckily, it's clean.
Okay, am I visible now? I'm on a different machine because of that problem I have every time I come to town council. Anyway.
Unfortunately, Dr. Hunt, we're talking to your stove.
I don't know how to do that.
No worries.
We know it's you, Dr. Hunt. Don't worry about
We
it.
believe it's you.
Okay, give me a thumbs up, somebody, if you can hear me or not.
We can
And
hear
see-
you.
Can you see me?
No.
No,
No.
but we know it's you.
All right. How's that?
Good looking
I have
stove.
no clue. Oh, you know what I did? Stupid me. I turned the camera around. Hey, back.
There you go. I thought I was on a real estate tour.
I'm reclaiming my time. Greetings. Tonight, I'm excited to bring the town council some good news about plans. First, there are different kinds of plans: conceptual, strategic, detailed work plans. What I'm going to talk about is the positive result of using each kind appropriately. I'm going to focus on work plans. There is a recently implemented detailed work plan which included goals, objectives, acquisition, milestones, schedules, and deliverables. It has an exciting outcome. The detailed work plan I'm talking about is the one developed to convert incandescent streetlights to LED streetlights. The whole project took over 18 months from conception to application, implementation, and completion. It required input from the Energy Committee advocating for the concept and work from the town manager's office to create a detailed work plan that addressed many complex factors. Collaboration was a key to success. The plan required that specific actions and tasks were set forth, funding was secured, schedule was followed, and the milestones were met. The results, hopefully you can see this. The results are in the upper part here is the, give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Thank you. You see the cycle, annual cycle of the streetlights. It's a very flat line on an annual basis on this black line. Over here on this side is where the implementation occurred. And you see that our use of electrical energy has gone down substantially. If you calculate it out over the last fiscal year, it's a 37% reduction in energy use. The lower curve is important to all of us because that's what our taxpayers pay for. This shows an increasing cost over time until the streetlight LED program was implemented. And you can see a major drop. This current is June, just this past June. The peak up here is June 2020. That reduction in cost, of avoided cost, is $165,000 per year going forward, at least. That's a 75% reduction in the cost to the taxpayers. That unspent money is now freed from the budget to be used for other things, such as roadway repairs, sidewalk repairs, building upgrades, and other capital improvements. But back to the beginning, that saved money can best be used if invested effectively, efficiently, in a collaborative effort to following a detailed work plan I emphasize, following a detailed work plan for which milestones are well-defined and met. Then the cycle continues. Thank you for your attention.
Dr. Hahn, thank you very much for that. We appreciate that and all of your hard work on seeing that project through. We appreciate it collectively as a town.
You're
Is there
welcome.
anyone else wishing to speak during Citizens Open Forum? Okay, Josh, I don't see any. I'm going to go ahead and move on.
Yep, I don't see anyone either.
Okay, next item on the agenda is appointments. We have none. Next item is hearings. We have a hearing. It is 7:21. However, petition P 2021-011, Cumberland Farms of Massachusetts Incorporated, doing business as Cumberland Farms, for a change of beneficial interest and change of officer. Just going to defer to the town manager to discuss that so we don't open the hearing.
Mr. President, the petitioner has once again requested a continuance to September 7th. They did come to an agreement with the state either yesterday or early today, but they have not had an opportunity to get their paperwork in order to go through the hearing. So they're asking for a continuance to September 7th, which I would encourage the council to grant.
So moved.
We need an actual vote on that?
Oh,
You do
yeah.
not need a vote.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, excellent. So we're going to move on to the next hearing that is scheduled, ordinance D FY 21-007, general ordinance, amend administrative code, part 3, chapter 157. At their meeting held on 6/16/21, the Rules and Procedures Committee voted to recommend approval as amended. This hearing has been duly advertised in the Enterprise and on the town's website and may be finally voted this evening. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. It is 7:22. I'm going to ask the petitioner if he wishes to speak, which is Town Council Fred Chase. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I would just like to say that this is, of course, the third reading of the proposed legislation. I brought that forward in April at about the time that a request had been made before the town administration to seek flying of the pride flag at some point during the month of June. And as the councilors know, town administration had expressed concern because there was not a policy in effect to consider that request and to do so fairly. And so that's what prompted me to draft this proposal and to bring it forward. I am happy to say that it has met with a great deal of public support and support among the council. I think that it is frankly a very, I won't say airtight, but I think it's a very comprehensive and cohesive effort to effectively create a set of guidelines, as it were, to govern the process and to allow for fairness to the citizens who might care to come forward and make a request. It is, of course, a process that provides for ultimate approval by the town council, so that there is that certainly that element of, if you will, control over the process. So I'll certainly defer to any questions from the council and or from the public, but I do hope that the measure will see final passage this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Chase, for all of your work on this particular ordinance and bringing this forward. I know it's been quite a bit of work. I'll first ask if there's any general questions from the public. Any general questions from the public? Josh,
Yeah.
Josh, I do not see any.
Nope, I don't see anyone.
Next, I'd ask if anyone from the public is speaking in favor. Anyone from the public wants to speak in favor? Okay, I don't see anybody. I'm going to move on to anyone from the public speaking in opposition. Anyone from the public speaking in opposition? I don't see anybody here. I'll move next to any questions from members of the town council. Any questions from the council? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. It is 7:25 and would certainly be happy to entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Is there any discussion?
No,
Certainly
none.
seeing none, I'll move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes,
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Thank you. 8 in favor, 0 against.
thank you. Moving on, G, license transactions. P 2021-015, one-day entertainment, Black Hat Brew Works, 25 Scotland Boulevard, August 14th, 2021, and August 28th, 2021. I'll defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, this application for a one-day entertainment license and also a one-day alcohol license is fairly consistent with what Black Hat has done in years past. And certainly we are amenable to their application, as are the relevant departments. So I'd encourage you to vote it.
Excellent. Entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move to
So
approve,
moved.
Mr. President.
I'll
Okay,
second.
Second. Any discussion?
Nope.
Counselor Columbotus.
I just noticed on the application that there wasn't a check mark next to the line that indicates a $75 license fee. Has that fee been waived or?
No, that fee would be collected at the point that when they come in to actually pick up the license.
Okay,
So
thank
it just hasn't been collected yet.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes,
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Thank you. 8 in favor, 0 against.
excellent. Moving on. H, presentations. We have none. I, town managers report. First item on the agenda is the Mitchell School update. I defer to the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Mitchell School update is Mitchell School work is continuing as planned and on schedule. They've really been doing, just my aside, they've really been doing an excellent job getting materials ordered, especially. I think everybody knows how difficult it is to get on top of supply chains. So they've done a very good job of that, but that's my aside. They had a topping off ceremony last week, which sort of is the ceremonial end of the major steel construction. Right now, floors are being poured, continue to be poured. Plumbing, electric continues to happen. And the exterior sheathing work will be beginning in the next week to 2 weeks or so. Honestly, the project, from my perspective, the project is being run well. I've been through quite a number of these types of projects, municipal building projects. This one seems to be run very well. We've had a very good relationship with the Mass School Building Authority. The site itself is very well organized. And I'm actually very impressed with the contractors and the OPM sensitivity to the neighbors and trying to accommodate the neighbors as best they can. So that's all good. Timeline still good with a projected completion date of July of 2020. July of 2022, which when I said that, when I was at the topping off ceremony, it occurred to me that that's really about a year away. So not that far away at all. So getting ready for September of 2022 occupancy. The next meeting is actually tomorrow night, Wednesday, August. The next meeting of the building committee, school building committee, is tomorrow, Wednesday, August 4th at 6 p.m. this is sort of a one-time change from the normal Monday schedule. The Monday, the 9th will likely, which is the currently scheduled meeting, Monday, the 9th will likely be canceled, but people that are interested can check the website to confirm that. And finally, BridgewaterSchoolProject.com is where you can get all the information that you would need or want about that school project. So that is what I have. Certainly happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from any member of the council? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move to COVID-19 update.
We are tracking very carefully this variant. I think, as everybody knows, it's certainly been in the news plenty. The COVID-19 variant, which is presumably more transmissible than the original version. So we're tracking that pretty carefully and assessing the impact on our Bridgewater residents. Right now, we only have 7 reported cases. So that's not too bad. The numbers are a little more challenging now because supposedly many people that have been vaccinated and get it either are non-symptomatic or don't report when they get a slight fever or some of the other symptoms, and they just let it pass. So the numbers are a little more difficult to track. Obviously, town hall is open, offices are open. Some departments have re-implemented some of the CDC guidelines on the precautions, and they have asked if they can do that, and we have certainly said that is fine. And we also have several departments that are affected directly by COVID. So as I often do, I ask for patience as we work through some of those employee absences. So I'm sure council's anxious to know when we're going to get back to a full, some sort of full in-person meeting. And we are in a slight holding pattern until we have some better data, but our plan is still to get back to a hybrid meeting setting in September, first meeting in September. So hybrid meeting gives the option of being in person or via Zoom. And we're working to try to make that as seamless a process as possible. So the vaccination rate is about where it has been. I can tell you 52% of Bridgewater residents are fully vaccinated, and another 5% have 1 dose. We are on the sort of the lower end of vaccination rates in Plymouth County. I think only Brockton, Middleborough, and Wareham are less than 52%. On the high end, Marion and Mattapoisett are about 75% fully vaccinated. So that's all I have. As you know, and as I've said, we are tracking it very carefully. I don't see the same acuity right now as we were seeing back in either April of 2020 or January, February of 2021. So that's where we stand. Happy to answer questions again.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions from members of the council? Councilor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mike, on the COVID-19 update, and I hope things don't get worse and we can come back to some sort of hybrid council meetings in September. Your colleagues at the university, what is the university preparing for? Which, I mean, they'll be back before September 7th. Are they fully opening the university in the fall, in next month, or what are their plans?
The last conversation I had with the university, they were planning a full opening. They've got a dribble of students coming back, I think next week. Athletes come back, I think in a couple weeks, and then obviously the full student body comes back beginning of September. So that was their plan. Last time I spoke to them, I know that they have closed down the vaccination center that they had opened up. They are still willing to help us if we need vaccine to vaccinate groups of people, or if we need to stand up a short-term one-day clinic. they are happy to help us with that. But in terms of their students, as far as I know, they are coming back.
And on the same note, our school district, are they planning on any changes in the school year? Any discussion on mask mandates inside the school? Or I know it could be a little bit early, but I don't know if they've set any policy yet.
I have not seen one, Counselor, but I can follow up with the superintendent and just double check, see where they are on that.
That's it. Thank you.
Welcome, Counselor George.
Actually, Mr. President, I'm all set. Councilor Gallagher asked a question about BSU. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I had a similar question too. I had one other comment if no other councilor has any comments. Okay, Michael, I just want to add, this past week I was participating in interviews remotely that were hybrid. And although I love the technology, I found it extremely difficult to hear anybody that's further away from sort of the main monitor. So before we transition that, I would like to see us conclude a number of tests specifically around hearing, because I had quite a bit of difficulty with that, and I wouldn't want to transition to that platform and citizens can't participate fully based on that issue. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, moving on to discussions. Sidewalk improvements. Council
President,
Columbotus. Oh,
Mr. President,
I apologize.
sorry.
Council Wood.
Just at the end of the manager's report there, for next time, can we talk about in the Mitchell update, the tax impact and when that's going to start and the rates and if it's up on the webpage yet?
Apologize, Council Wood. Anyone else have any additional things for the town manager? Council Souza.
Yes, it's back to what happened last time when I put in my original request for the new maintenance person to come in. I asked for some kind of a time frame as to when things were being done and the projected cost. We heard about things that needed to be done and who we didn't have and who they were going to hire, but I didn't see anything showing what projects were prioritized and what the cost might be. I'd like to have them come back or someone come back and fill us in a little bit further, keep us up to date a little more, other than, well, we looked at it and we think this has to be done. Thank you.
Okay. Council Moore.
I'm also interested in just getting a little better sense of the history of technology use in the town, and specifically just understanding the evolution of these information systems over the past couple of years. I was hoping the town manager might be able to come back and give us an update on that.
Any other councilors? If not, you'd get your usual update from Josh for the town manager's next report. With that said, I'll move on, and I apologize, Councilor Columbotus, you're up. Sidewalk improvements discussion.
Yeah, in light of Jacqueline Hunt's letter that she wrote to councilors concerning sidewalks, that the general state of the sidewalks, I thought it was important that we raise this issue and try to get a better lay of the land as to where we are in making progress in improving the sidewalks. Wondering where it is on in the order of priorities in the town manager's budget. I know we can use Chapter 90 funds from the state to improve sidewalks, and I'm wondering, you know, how much of those funds we're dedicating towards sidewalk improvement. So if we could just get a kind of general overall overarching strategy from the town manager as to how he seeks to improve the quality and passability of the town sidewalks, I think that would be useful.
Sure, Councilor. I as I've mentioned, you know, a couple times, certainly as we were implementing or beginning to implement our DPW, one of the primary, well, really right now, the primary focus that we have is a comprehensive road, sidewalk, utility, drainage plan. And DPW has, this is really the first project that they're really coalescing around. So by the end of But I have asked them, the DPW director and the other departments, by the end of this calendar year, we want to see a 10-year plan to improve roads, sidewalks, drainage, water line, sewer line. And the reason that those are all lumped together is because if we're going to, you don't want to be in a position where you're going to repave a road and then realize a year later that, oh, we've got, asbestos pipe in the ground carrying water. We need to, replace that. So what we're proposing, or what we will be proposing, is a comprehensive approach to address, all of those, layers, so to speak. And as part of that, certainly sidewalks play an important part. I've said, and I've voiced this internally many times, when we redo a street, our goal is always to redo the sidewalk. We're part of a Complete Streets program. We've made a commitment to accommodate bike and pedestrian traffic wherever we can. Our redesign and rebuilding of Cross Street is a good example. We need a connector, a good sidewalk connector, the length of Cross Street. So that engineering is going on now. We're re-engineering or engineering on Flag Street as well. We know that South Street, Vernon Street, and the Deerfield area are sort of next up is needing help. And when we redesign those, because those three will need complete redesign. So when we redesign all of those, it will be included. We will be including sidewalks as part of that. My preference, and the council has not taken, hadn't made any policy statement. I don't know that the council needs to, but my preference when we do sidewalks is to do concrete sidewalks. Traditionally around town, certainly outside of the main downtown area, you see a lot of pavement sidewalks, the use of pavement to create a sidewalk. Pavement is more prone to cracking and heaving, both by winter, winter thaws and freezes, and also the growth of trees, around them. So preference, we did concrete on Stetson when we redid Stetson. That seems to have worked out quite well. And certainly we're going to try to maintain that. There is obviously a cost factor. The concrete sidewalks are slightly more expensive, well, definitely more expensive than simple paved sidewalks or pathways. But that's an investment for the long term. So you have to judge the upfront cost with the length of the term of the how long the sidewalk will last. So that's sort of where we are now. I can tell you it's going to be an expensive proposition. I've said this before. Chances are it's going to be in the $15 to $20 million range. But that will be, as I say, phased in over a 10-year period. So we're working on that complete presentation. Well, we're working on the complete plan, and then we'll present that towards the end of December.
Right. I appreciate the wisdom of not pouring a sidewalk over a inadequate substructure. It's throwing good money after bad. So I appreciate the overall kind of comprehensive approach to it. And I think citizens need to realize that it will take time, that our infrastructure, we've pretty dramatically underfunded our infrastructure improvements over the years. And so it will take some time. I'm also wondering, to what extent does the planning board require developments to contribute towards, the installation of sidewalks? Do they typically require sidewalks within a development perimeter, or do they often waive that requirement?
That's a good question. I believe that there is in the planning board rules and procedure and the subdivision rules and procedures. I think there is a call for sidewalks within developments. And I'm sure on occasion that those have been waived depending upon, the location of the subdivision and its, adjoining, whatever adjoins it. But that is something, when you see the master plan, if you've looked at it, you'll see that that's one of the recommendations. The master plan is to really do a better job of sort of merging planning board rules and procedures with transportation goals and pedestrian bicycle transportation goals.
Are there any alternative funding sources that we could tap into to increase pedestrian access?
We do have where straight pedestrian access. There are plenty of grant opportunities which we're going to avail ourselves of very shortly about trail networks in parks and forested areas. But off the top of my head, other than Complete Streets, which is a funding opportunity, I think sidewalks specifically would be sort of an ancillary benefit on maybe a MassWorks grant or other grants. But Complete Streets is really one of the best funding sources. And as you know, we've gotten some Complete Streets funding to do some improvements out on Main Street and some of Broad Street. So we're constantly at that. The bulk of the improvement, the financing plan for the improvements over a 10-year period will probably be bonding. But there's, as grant opportunities come along, new grant opportunities or old grant opportunities that are still around, over that 10-year period, we certainly would be supplementing whatever bond income with those grant opportunities.
And we have some bonding obligations coming off the books, don't we? Will we have increased bonding capability in the next 5-10 years?
We are actually in pretty good shape, even despite the bonding obligations for the new school. We're still, in terms of bonding, in pretty good shape. So I know our finance director, Tony Salmonti, has been working, sort of laying some foundation for how we can, do. I always hesitate to say creative financing, because that doesn't sound very good. But honestly, it is pretty creative financing, and how we can merge, if we decide to do either a DIF in the downtown area, or we do some sort of MassWorks grant for the downtown work, that plays into that financing and offsets a good chunk of the bonding expense. But in terms of overall bonding, we're in pretty good shape. We definitely have capacity.
I would just assert that, increasing pedestrian access throughout town is really a good long-term investment. That we have a relatively attractive downtown, which has got a lot of potential for redevelopment, and I think it would be an investment well worth making. Not many towns in the area have a kind of a discrete downtown which can offer, that has the density we have, and so I think it'd be investment well worth making. So I personally would encourage it.
Councilor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make sure I'm not on mute. No, not on mute. Thank you, Mr. President. And I really, feel bad for Ms. Hunt and what she's gone through, trying to do some of her, shopping and so forth in the downtown area. I do think that a priority should be within our downtown area and immediate side streets within the downtown, because that's where a lot of people are, and that's where there's a lot of foot traffic, whether they're coming from Waterford Village, whether they're coming from the university, whether they work downtown in the stores and so forth. So I think that perhaps there's something immediately that can be done, and send somebody out there and look at some of the smaller things that can be repaired, or to make it smoother, so there's a little bit easy on walking for those with disabilities. I'll remember the conversation back in, I'm going to say it was 2017, 4 years ago, when Capstone Development came in to pitch for the first time, their idea for the McElwain School. And how they committed at that time that they would do something within the sidewalks in the area that they were going to develop the McElwain School, because they noticed when they came to town, and I brought it up at that meeting about 4 years ago, is that when we have Main Street in Bridgewater that has relatively new sidewalks on both sides of the street, but yet there was a gentleman every day that I would see in his motorized scooter in the road, going downtown in the road when there's sidewalks on both sides, because I don't think his motorized scooter was compatible with the layout of the sidewalks and the cracks and the crevices and so forth. So I do agree we need to take a look at this, and I am hoping that with this federal infrastructure bill that Washington is fighting over, that I don't think we'll get 20 million, but I do think we should get a lot of money, and I would assume that some of that could go towards the infrastructure for roads. And I believe when they use the word roads, they also mean pedestrian walkways and sidewalks. One question I have for the town manager is, as far as Plymouth Street goes, which is really classified as Route 104, is that considered a state road? Does the town maintain that road, 104?
104, the town maintains 104. So the town does not maintain most of Bedford Street. And then that picks up again. So up until right about where the Academy building is, and then it picks up again on the other side of town and continues up. That's state managed.
Because they did when they did the lights up at High Street, they did the sidewalk, a good section, about a half a mile sidewalk on the I believe west side of the street. So I'm looking forward to the priority, the list you bring to us later this year. I do think I'd like to see, if possible, to send someone out and look at some of the areas that can be immediately remedied to accommodate some of the bad areas, even if you have to transfer some money. That's why we have some good reserves in the town. But I think it's a good discussion, Councilor Columbotus, to bring to the table, and it certainly does need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Wood.
Thank you. A couple, hopefully simple questions for the town manager. At this time of year, especially this time of year in August, everyone will notice that there's weeds popping up between the granite curbstone and the asphalt. And the function of those weeds destroys the edging and allows water to seep underneath, which is what causes the cracks, crevices, and other damage to the sidewalk. Does the town have any mechanism, herbicide or else, otherwise, to manage where the sidewalk is completely adjacent to the road and get rid of these weeds so we can have preventative measures? That's number one. I have a couple of follow-ups.
No, that's a great question. We do send crews out, certainly in the most downtown areas. I think, as you know, we are down, right now we're down about 4 bodies in our roadways department. And we're probably going to lose another 1 or 2 to retirement over the next year or so. So recruitment there has been a challenge. But aside from that, we do send crews out to try to tackle some of the worst weeds. And I'll be the first to admit that I think we could do a better job there. Certainly more frequent job there so that we don't see the weeds pop up. And Councilor Wood's exactly right. I mean, weeds undermine the pavement or undermine the sealant that's between the granite and the road, and cause water to seep and then eventually cause heaving. So,
yeah. So the follow-up question here is about financing. So you talked about the Chapter 90 money. Are you anticipating taking money from capital stabilization as well? And if so, shouldn't that be part of a broader strategy about how we utilize our capital planning budget?
Are you referencing in terms of the total
more comprehensive plan?
The total more comprehensive plan, because there's a lot of other things on the list too. All those sidewalks and roadways, are critical, as we've heard tonight. There are a lot of other things on the priority list for capital stabilization, and that doesn't have a big input of capital each year. So I'm thinking, the way we were talking about workshops and priority lists and other things, a larger comprehensive look at what that would be.
I think that's once the finance director gets his, all the information that he needs from DPW about, about the work plan will be, then he's going to, settle down and piece together a financing plan. I'm sure part of it could include capital stabilization, but I think we recognize that capital stabilization generally does not amount to anywhere near the amount that would be needed for that kind of endeavor. So during the run up to the school vote, we had a number of sessions with taxpayers to explain the impact of tax bills, and we were very, very clear that we had two projects in addition to the school, two projects that would be coming down the pike. One would be a comprehensive road and sidewalk rebuilding, and the other one would obviously be the fire station. So sort of to touch on just your prior comment, as soon as we can get the price of or the cost of a 10-year plan, then we can get some idea or put up on the website some idea of what it may cost taxpayers if taxpayers chose to fund a portion of that through a debt exclusion vote.
Right. Okay, you answered that question. The final question then has to do with sidewalks that don't exist yet. So I've received a number of requests about Oak Street, and I think there's Comfort Street and potentially other streets that have never had a sidewalk. And I'm just wondering how we fit those into our plans in terms of the repair versus build, and how do we make all the pieces fit together?
Very carefully. We do know that there have been requests on Oak, and I'm not sure if I'm aware of the one on Comfort, but we do know that we've had a number of requests for Oak Street. And some of the challenges that we have to sort of figure into the pricing on some of this is establishing where the town layout actually is. We went through this for other reasons. We went through this on the Elm Street project. We actually had to establish the bounds for Elm Street so that we could determine whether or where we could actually put the sidewalk on Elm Street. Oak Street is, if I recall, is a similar situation. Oak Street doesn't have a formal layout, so it requires establishing the road layout by going through all the deeds of all the abutters to Oak Street. But once we do, and again, that's a cost that gets figured into the overall plan. So there are, it is a challenge. There are a lot of moving pieces. There are presumably a lot of funding sources or potential funding sources. So how we ladder out that work and then propose to pay for it each year is what Tony's going to be working on as soon as he gets sort of cost estimates and unit prices.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Moore.
Thank you, Mr. President. A question through you to the town manager. I've heard a statistic that we have, I think, about 120 miles of roadway in Bridgewater. And I have to imagine some smaller percentage of that actually has sidewalks. Let's say, I don't know, 50 miles or something has sidewalks. I just want to make sure I understand the discussion in terms of what we're getting funding for versus what we should expect to see in the town. Is there any scenario where we expect to cover the 120 miles with sidewalk? I think the answer is no, right?
With the full every street in town with a sidewalk? No, yeah. There's not that. We don't contemplate that scenario. And there's some streets that, to be very honest, are not appropriate for sidewalks.
So then when we tick down the list, at some point we have to come up with some criteria for what streets do actually get a sidewalk. And I think to Councilor Wood's kind of comment earlier, there are many streets that probably should have a sidewalk that have none today. So you see the scenario where people are in the street with dogs, et cetera. And so I would just be curious maybe to get a sense from you on, I guess maybe two questions. One is, have we had any independent third party assess the town and give us a recommendation on which ones should have sidewalks and maybe which sidewalks should be repaired? And then the second is, I'd be curious just to get a sense of how do we prioritize those sidewalks that we want to invest in? I think we heard, downtown might be a priority. Older sidewalks might be a priority. I'd just be curious to get your perspective on those two things.
So we have not had a third party come in and make recommendations about where we should place sidewalks, where none exist. We just haven't done that. We have had a third party come in and assess the state of our sidewalks currently. We have about 142 miles, I believe 142 miles of roads in Bridgewater, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 miles of sidewalks. But we have had somebody come in and assess the condition of the sidewalks, overall, and it's overall, the sidewalks are not the worst they could be by any means. The majority are not excellent, but they're listed in fair to good condition. But I think to Councilor Columbotus's point, in the downtown area where we would expect and encourage more pedestrian traffic, that is the area that we really would want to focus on. And any other highly traveled sidewalk. So Bridgewater State University students do have sidewalks that they use. Certainly people in other parts of town have highly use sidewalks quite frequently. So we have some of that, but as part of this analysis, we'll be looking to dig a little deeper into both where sidewalks should be, where they don't exist. I can't tell you that we would do at this stage that we would do hire a third party to establish that. But I think that's an internal, certainly an internal process that we can do.
Thank you.
Any other councilors for discussion on sidewalks? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move on to committee reports. Do we have any committee reports tonight? Councilor Wood.
Yep, thank you. The Budget and Finance met shortly before this meeting, and we talked about, the just
2154.
2154, and nope. It was the
56. Ask me, Council 93.
Yes, thank you. 56. Thank you. It's the MOA. And we unanimously recommended to the council for passage.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilor Wood. Any other committee reports? Councilor Souza.
President. Yes, the Rules and Procedures Committee, we had ordinance FY 21-011 and 012. They were both very similar, and they were dealing with the number of councilors when we get restructured. And we had two members of the committee that evening, and we looked at it, and we felt that if we just reworded 011, it would take care of the situation. I could read it for you if you like. We voted 2-0 to recommend approval. And what it is Article 2, Section 2-1 of the Bridgewater Town Charter. Town Council Assemble votes to amend Town Charter Article 2, Section 2-1 as read. We took out sections of what the proposal that we received. I will read you the entire thing, including the changes. There shall be a town council consisting of 9 members, which shall exercise the legislative powers of the town. Each of the districts into which the town is divided shall have a single member to be known as a district councillor, whom shall be nominated and elected by and from the voters of their respective districts. The remaining members shall be known as councillors at large and shall be nominated and elected by and from voters at large. The original had X's and X's to notify the numbers of who and when, and that was taken out. And we felt that this one here would leave it, because there's so many changes coming down the pipe, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. So we could, at that point in time, go with 6 and 3, we can go with 7 and 2. But at least this puts us in a position where we can do that. And that's it. So now it's before the council.
Okay. I think at our next step, it's going to be move it to advertisement. So I would open up the floor at this time if you're willing for any discussion based on the amendments on that particular order.
Yes, go ahead.
Any questions from the council? Councilor Moore?
Maybe if I could just add to the statement a little bit. I did want to give some context for why 9 versus other options. So similar to what Councilor Souza said, in thinking through the number of people on the council, we thought if it was more than 9, it could become inefficient pretty quickly because we would have to add people essentially in pairs to keep an odd number. On the flip side, if it was less than 9, it could become an unnecessary burden for subcommittees. So we would essentially have people having to participate in more subcommittees, and we were worried that that might discourage other people volunteering for roles. So we thought 9 was appropriate. As mentioned, sort of based on the models that we saw, we thought that that would last many decades without any issues. So that's just where the decision to stay at 9 came from.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any further discussion from the council?
If I may, Mr. Rushton.
Sure.
I believe those were initially sent to committee, possibly to stay in committee for a while, with the opinion from the town clerk at her last discussion with you all relative to the potential of re-precincting. And I think the numbers were left vague intentionally, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they were left vague intentionally because we're not sure yet what her opinion will be relative to how many new precincts there will actually be. So I would make the recommendation, if you are going to be sending it to advertising, that's fine, but I would do it with the thought that it probably shouldn't come back onto your agenda until you all have maybe an opinion or further recommendations from the town clerk on the amount of precincts that you're going to need to have. Because at this point, it's kind of the cart before the horse, right? We're not sure of the number of precincts we need to have. So to pick a number of counselors, we really can't do that yet. In addition there too, one of those that are getting advertised will need to go to the legislature as special legislation because it's actually a charter amendment. So I believe the intent of the original legislation and the reason there were X's in there were to stay in committee so that the town clerk could come back and report when we got further information on the re-precincting. But if that's not correct, that's fine. But I would say that obviously, if you all are going to be voting on a charter change, you probably want to make sure we have the right number of precincts established.
Appreciate that, Attorney Rollins. Councilor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can hold my thoughts on that when we get to the actual ordinance. I mean, I believe we're talking about this under committee reports. We're not actually talking about the ordinance at this time. But I will chime in now and while everybody's talking about this. But anyway, with all due respect to Attorney Rollins, that, I mean, the purpose of this was to get something to the legislature now. immediately. So they would approve it. And when it comes back to us, we would plug in the numbers. So having 9 counselors, that language is fine. But we can always plug in under the administrative code, the number of districts. The charter, we need, the charter can stay the way it is presented with 9 members. It's the administrative code that would talk about districts, which we can plug in without it going to the legislature. So the purpose of me sponsoring these is to get those into committee and get them back to us now to get those to the legislature for approval. So when the districts are created and when the legislature is done with their redistricting and when the town clerk is comfortable with what is happening, we can plug in those numbers so we're ready. So it's not to delay. That's my understanding. You know, when we get to this, if the town clerk is on the call and wants to, you know, either affirm what Attorney Rollins is saying or kind of affirm what my intent was with these articles, I'd be happy to listen to her. But I don't think these should be delayed. I think we need to get something to the legislature, get them to approve our intent. So when the process is complete, we plug in the districts through the administrative code, not the charter. And the charter says 9 counselors, and I'm comfortable with that.
So I may have been misunderstood in terms of what I thought the original intent was. I thought you all were waiting to determine how many counselors there would end up being. But if you all are comfortable, obviously having it go forward with 9 and that going to the state legislature, I have no issue with. It's up to you guys what you choose. I thought you were waiting to see how many districts there'd be so you could do the mathematical problem. But either way for me is fine. Obviously, the sooner the better. So my intention was just to talk about the procedural stance, not whether it was 9 or 10 or 12 or whatever it came to be.
A point of information, Mr. President, to the attorney.
Sure, go ahead, Councilor Wood.
Would we be allowed to change the admin code, which would be different than the charter itself if it goes through the process? I thought there was a restriction on the body, our body itself, any legislative body voting on its own construction.
Yeah, well, I think there are issues with changing the admin code if it's going to contradict the charter, right? So I think, again, you have to have the charter change first. And once you have the charter change, you can change the admin code. So the admin code should simply mirror whatever the charter change you all come up with is. I wasn't aware you all had reached a consensus on, you thought there would be 9 counselors. That's up to you guys, obviously, however you're going to construct it. I thought the intention was to figure out how many precincts there was going to be and then establish that. But obviously you guys do whatever you're comfortable with. But no, if you send that to the state legislature and they approve it as it is, you can't then change it again because we'll have to redo the entire process.
Mr. President.
Okay, Councilor Souza, go ahead.
Yes, the town clerk was present at our meeting and she filled us in on some new information that she received since she had come to the council. Based on that, you see that 012, we didn't not bringing it forward, okay? So you can plug in the numbers as Councilor Gallagher said. But this piece here that we changed, we'll leave it at 9 members. And then it says, how many precincts you have. It's the code that's going to eventually, with the state, is going to set up how many precincts or how many districts you have. And then from there, you go with whoever's left over, would be 2 or 3 members that would be at large. Okay. So if we get this piece here, 21011, this is the place that has to go on to be approved. Am I right? And so that's why it was written up this way. It plugs in just one number, meaning that we're going to have 9 counselors. And when we come down to knowing exactly how many districts we have, again, like Councilor Gallagher said, the administrative code will follow those numbers and set it up.
Well, so obviously my intent was not to have this go awry of parliamentary procedure. So I wanted to just let you know if you had a certain intent that it should stay and not be voted on until that's established. So obviously this discussion should be happening at the point in time of the vote. But my intent in speaking up was just, I didn't know you all had arrived at a number. So I was just trying to be helpful in letting you know if you hadn't, you should leave that flexibility open.
Well, we certainly appreciate your opinion on the issue, Attorney Rollins. Councilor Souza, you had the town clerk present at the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Is there any further discussion?
One more question, if I may.
Sure. Councilor Wood.
So who decides the number of districts? Because it's a, you know, a district is a combination of a number of precincts. And I think we're assuming that each district will have the same number of precincts, but who ultimately decides how many districts there are in the town?
You do. Town
Administrative
council
code.
does. Which is exactly what my point is. So you all haven't made that decision yet. So that's why I'm saying, obviously we'll send whatever you want us to send to the legislature, but I didn't know you had voted on the number of districts yet or how this makeup of counselors will come to be. That was why I had mentioned that.
Mr. President, point of order. These are committee reports. We're having full-blown discussions outside of the agenda. Can we get back onto the agenda, please?
Agreed.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Council Souza, do you want to talk about the FY 21-012?
Okay, that one was tabled until we know how many precincts we have, and how many districts we have.
Okay. All right, because it's in the agenda.
Mhm.
Okay. Very good. Is that it, Council Souza?
Until we vote on this later in the evening.
Okay. All right. Any other committee reports? Okay, seeing none, moving on. Legislation for action. Order FY 21-054, acceptance of federal funds, Corona Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. At their meeting held on 7/20/21, the Budget and Finance Committee voted to recommend approval. The Finance Committee voted to recommend approval at their meeting on 7/12/2021. This measure may be finally considered this evening.
I'll move to
in a motion.
approve. Move to
Second?
approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes,
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Thank you. 8 in favor, 0 against.
Next item is Order 0 FY 21-056 MOA Town of Bridgewater and Local 1700 ASME Council 93. The Budget and Finance Committee met on 8/3/2021. It was a unanimous vote as informed by Councilor Wood. The Finance Committee voted to recommend their approval at their meeting on 7/12/21. This measure may be finally considered this evening upon receipt. Motion to
approve.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
We did have, if I may, Mr. President, we did have discussion with the town manager during our session about the financial impact. It appears to be fairly minor, and he's pulling this in line with comprehensive studies, et cetera. So highly recommend this passage.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
yes,
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Thank you. 8 in favor, 0 against.
Next item is order 0 FY 22-008, acceptance of a gift, VSU donation of $55,000. At their meeting held on 7/20/21, the Budget and Finance Committee voted to recommend approval. The Finance Committee voted to recommend approval at their meeting on 7/21/21. This measure may be finally considered this evening. Entertain a motion.
So
to
moved.
approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we got a second. Any discussion?
Mr. President, I just want to say thank you very much to BSU for a very generous donation, and they're very consistent with it. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood, Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Thank you. 8 in favor, 0 against.
Thank you. Next item, ordinance D FY 21-011, general ordinance, amend Article 2, Section 2-1 of the Town Charter. At their meeting held on 7/20/2021, the Rules and Procedures Committee voted to recommend approval as amended. This measure may not be finally considered this evening as it requires advertising. So entertain a motion to advertise.
So moved.
Second.
Second for discussion. I may have been speaking. We have a second.
Second.
Yeah, Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you. Council Wood.
Thanks. I'm just wondering if we can hear from the town clerk, because apparently, the committee got some additional information. I think it's critical that the council as a whole gets the same information.
I agree. If I do see that Marilee Hunt, town clerk, is present for the meeting, if she wishes to speak on the matter, we would certainly appreciate and entertain it.
I'm happy to speak to the counselors as always. I'm not sure that the committee got a great deal of other information than what you already had, because we haven't heard anything back. I think what I shared with them that night was that the legislature was just in the process of making their determination, that they are going to make their determinations before we're allowed to make our determinations. So I think that was the fresh information that was timely and shared with them that evening, which I think I had told all the council that was coming up, but the vote was imminent at that point in time. So the legislature in the Commonwealth has determined that they are going to set the federal and state legislative districts before we're allowed to precinct the town. And so we will be pushing our timeline back more than originally I was telling you. We would try to get those numbers by September, and we would have to have it to the legislature by the 1st of November, and they'd have to have it done by December. We're not going to get the numbers until the lines, probably the district lines, until probably November, if the legislature moves fast enough on it. And then by December, we will have to have our precincts into them. So we still don't have the census count. We still don't know what our options are. The things we know that are true are the things that I told you before. We definitely know we can't have 7 districts. We don't, with the big census block at the university, we can't have 14 precincts. We don't have enough population for 14 precincts now. So we know that it's going to be 12 or fewer precincts, which when we combine them, I'm putting 2 or 3 precincts in a district, you're going to have fewer districts. So I'm shooting for, hoping that we can find 6 districts for you, and then that you could have 3 at-large counselors. That is an option we're keeping our fingers crossed about. The people who do the GIS think that might be possible. But we don't know that. It could be that we have to go to 5 precincts, and then you go with 4 at-large counselors. Okay, that would be 10 districts, 10 precincts, five districts. Okay, sorry. Is that clear? So it had been my recommendation at the committee, and I bow to the committee, whatever they want to do. My recommendation the whole time along has been to not put a number of counselors in the charter, but to put the number in the admin code. That way the admin code isn't fighting with the charter in any way. It's just clarifying the charter. And that you would say that you have one counselor per district and a sufficient number of at-large counselors to make it an uneven number. That was my recommendation, just my recommendation. The committee chose to set the number at 9. I don't object to that. You may end up with 4 districts and 5 at-large counselors or something like that. That's a possibility now or sometime in the future. That's what happens when you set the number. But we are trying for 6 and 3 this year. And of course, it will be your decision when it comes down to it. But it's going to take a lot of manipulating of data before it gets to that. And I foresee us, as the town clerk's office who's designated to do this, doing a lot of pre-work for you as your staff before you get those numbers and have to sit down with all that GIS stuff and try to talk to the people at the Donahue Institute who are doing all that work. That makes sense.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Council Souza.
So if we can agree that we're going to have 9 council members, this is what this does. It doesn't say how many you're going to have in districts, and it doesn't say how many you're going to have at large. That's going to be left up to the administrative code. Basically what Councilman Dennis was saying earlier. Okay, so the ones before you, 011, which is going to be going to the legislature, just says we'll have a total of 9. There's no other numbers in there. The breakdown is how many districts, we'll have a council person for each one, and then the remainder will be at large. That's what this says. And again, back to the admin code, that's what's going to determine how many of each you're going to have.
So
My just so I can weigh in now, my suggestion previously was, because you do not know yet the number of districts and the exact breakdown of people per district, picking a number that may mathematically become impossible might not be what you want to do at this time. That was my only suggestion. And I thought the reason those numbers were left out was because we didn't know yet, as Ms. Hunt has shared, and she didn't share any new information just now. I think her and I have the same information that we've always talked about. We don't have the information yet from the state. We don't know about the numbers. We don't know about the exact amounts in the census. We don't know the number of districts. So to say there's going to be a certain number of counselors may be something that you want to not do at this time until you guys have decided how the districts are going to break out and what districts will be part of what precincts and how that will break down. And then from there, I think you make a decision on final numbers. But again, I'm just talking from kind of a practical common sense perspective on that. You all can vote what you want, but what I am concerned with is if the mathematics don't work right when we get the definitive numbers in, we're starting this from scratch. That's all.
Attorney Rollins, just so if I could follow up so I'm clear and following this, would this be in your original comment about you had expected this to stay in rules and procedures for some time and then come out as we knew more information?
Yeah, what I expected was once Ms. Hunt received additional information or if I received additional information from the state saying this is how the districts break out, this is what the census looks like, I had expected maybe some recommendations from her to the committee or to the full council. And obviously I would work with her as well when she came up with her recommendations and then come back to you all to vote on that. That was my understanding. Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
May I say, Mr. President, may I say one more thing?
Sure, Ms. Hunt, go ahead.
I don't want to say I disagree with Attorney Rollins, but I am very concerned that if you wait until we have the numbers to do the charter change, that you are not going to have time to get the charter change passed through the state legislature before we have to make all these decisions. That's why my thought and my encouragement is to change the charter now and leave it ambiguous. Just say one counselor per district. And then put the number in the admin code for later when we get it, because you can change the admin code by having your own meetings. And you don't have to go to the state legislature to have that changed. So that's been my rationale. I think you need to have a fast track with changing the charter. Now, maybe Attorney Rollins knows something that I don't know about that yet. Maybe he's figured out a fast way to get the charter changed and not have to worry about the legislature. But that's my concern. Other than that, I don't have a concern about it.
No, there's no such thing. Unfortunately, I wish there was a fast track for that. I think we all do. I don't. What this actually says is 9 members, though, which is not exactly what you're saying, Ms. Hunt. So that's not what I have before us. So that's what I was commenting on. First and foremost, this actually, the charter change says consisting of 9 members. That's a very different proposed amendment than what you're proposing. In addition there too, we would just have to make sure any proposed amendment fits in line with what the current structure of the council is, right? Because if the state legislature approves a new form, that could cause problems for us if it's premature to us changing it to something different. So that hasn't been looked at. All I had was the amendment that's before us tonight, which says 9 members, which is why I made the suggestion that I did, because I don't think it's in line with what you're actually saying. And I do have concerns picking a number. So that's really a concern for the council. I don't want you guys to have to do your work twice. That's all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Council Wood.
Thank you. I have 2 concerns I'd like to raise. One is, as Attorney Rollins said, we don't have a finished piece of work yet for how many districts there are, how many precincts there are, et cetera. And because of that, I disagree that on any given Tuesday, we can just rewrite the administrative code into whatever numbers we want. I think there's a significant amount of Massachusetts constitutional work that says that we can't do that under a charter form of government. But the other concern is if we decide tonight to pick a number like 9 and the end result is 5 districts, my concern in that form of government, if we don't think about it enough, is that you can have a concentration of power within a neighborhood. And because you'd have 4 at large and 1 district, and they could all live on Main Street, or they could all live on, in Grange Park or something like that. And so maybe it won't happen, but the form of government we have today evenly distributes the 7 of us out to various districts. So there is no concentration of power in that form of government. So I would hesitate tonight to pick this number without knowing the other facts before us. And I would think that, the whole state is doing this. So why wouldn't the state fast track us or put us on a higher priority than normally, the year it takes to get a charter change done? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Columbotus.
I believe Mrs. Hunt's notion was that by being able to manipulate the number of at-large counselors, we have some wiggle room and we can conform to whatever the state comes, whatever the precinct numbers are, we can kind of work a way around it. So that gives us a little bit of slush in order to make the numbers work. So I think that was her intent in being comfortable with the figure 9, that we can make it work by manipulating the number of at-large versus district counselors. So is that right, Mrs. Hunt?
I would still recommend no numbers in the charter. I would say 1 district counselor per district and enough at-large counselors to make it an uneven number. That would have been what my suggestion would have been.
That's how it went to
And you
committee.
find the actual numbers in the admin code.
Counselor Gallagher.
But thank you, Mr. President. That, what Ms. Hunt just said is exactly what went to the committee. That's what was before the committee. So what you see here with the number in it is what was amended by committee, which is there. I wasn't at that meeting, that was their discussion. But it went to the, as far as 11 FY 21-011 goes, the amendment to the 12, excuse me, as far as 12 goes, but the charter change did not go to the committee with a number in it. They added that number. And it went to the committee exactly how Ms. Hunt just said, because we can fill in the numbers in the admin code. The charter doesn't need to say 9 members or 7 districts. The charter does not need to say that. The admin code does.
I'm not exactly sure that I would agree with that. I think our current charter states a number of counselors. And I think if you were to send to the legislature an amendment to that charter that didn't have a specific number in it, I think you're likely to never get that approved. I think there's a reason. I don't know a single charter that doesn't have the number of councilmen or selectmen or aldermen. It doesn't exist. And there's a reason, because they want that definitive. So I would be very hesitant, and I would not advise sending to the legislature an amendment to the charter about the number of counselors that this body's made up of that doesn't have a number in it, right? I think that's that's incredibly vague. So while I understand the point completely, and I get what we're trying to do, I don't know how a state legislature approves a charter that has an indefinite number of people. We don't know how many districts we're going to have. We don't know how many precincts we'll end up having. I think it leaves it wide open. And I think it makes it very difficult. I completely understand Ms. Hunt's concern about moving this through the state legislative process, but I think that's something we're going to have to all push for. We're going to have to push for our state reps and our reps to try to push this. And I suspect it of all things, it may actually have to happen, right? Because we have to have elections. So I don't know. I can't guarantee you that, but I think it's very risky business to send a charter amendment that doesn't name a specific number of counselors or selectmen but by all means, you guys can do it. I mean, I'm not, I never tell you what to do. I just don't think it's a prudent approach.
Then my point is, if our current charter already says 9 members, then why do we need to even do anything with this? What language is in here that's different than what our current charter says?
You don't have to do anything with this until you get to the point of knowing how many districts you're going to have, and then what the breakdown is going to be relative to that. You all may decide at that point you want 7 council members. You all at that point may decide you want 11 council members made up of 5 districts and several. I don't know, which is why I'm getting at that. It's a situation where I understand the intent behind what you're trying to do entirely. I get getting ahead of this, but you don't have the information to make a final decision on it yet. So I'm just recommending that you wait for that information. By all means, if you don't want to wait, that's okay. Then you push it through and we try to have the state legislature approve it. But it's likely, if you change your mind at the next stage, that there's going to be more councilmen, or that, there's going to be less, or that there's going to be more at large. We're going to have to go through this again. That's all. That was
my final point, Mr. President, my final point, and with all due respect to our town manager, and this isn't against him at all. It's just that I did read somewhere that if we don't act as a council by a certain period, that the town manager can make these decisions.
No.
I am not aware of that at all.
I thought I read something similar. That if we don't act at a certain period of time, that the town manager or town administrator could, but the state could make these decisions for us.
Well, that's true. However, I highly doubt that the state would make a unilateral decision for us if we have pending special legislation about, what we're proposing, right? Because they're the ones, they're not going to step in and say, well, you're not doing anything, because we'll say, well, we have special legislation pending. So
Right.
you act on our legislation and you don't have to act for us, right? So that's all I'm saying.
So I don't
Attorney Rollins, could I just ask, obviously we're having a robust conversation. I'm not sure we're going to get to a consensus tonight on this particular issue.
Sure.
I personally would like to find a way to send it back to Rules and Procedures, have a discussion. When we have more information, they meet, bring forth a proposal, and then we call an emergency meeting if we need to, if it's prior to our next meeting, which is until, I believe, the 7th of September, in order to allow more time for more information, a more informed decision. I don't know if we're going to get to an informed decision tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely, someone could make a motion to send it back to committee. You absolutely can do that. It's like I said, it's up to you guys. All I'm trying to advise you is of a process so that if it comes to be that, I want to give you all the most flexibility that you possibly can have when you get those maps in, to decide however you all want to do it. So I don't think you want to be boxed into anything until you know those facts. That's all. But that's my only thought in anything that I'm advising here today. But yes, you can absolutely motion to have it sent back to committee for further consideration.
Okay, appreciate that. And I do see that Marilee seems to be in agreement with that, but I want to just defer to Councilor Moore for his comments.
Yeah, if I could, I like the idea of sending it back, but I do want to make sure I know, or we've discussed the guidance to give that committee when it gets it. Because I think there is some confusion here. And I think maybe just to set some context on what I thought the guidance, or what I thought the intention was, maybe like the facts with it, and if others could weigh in and correct that where needed. So I thought there was an ask to act with urgency. So if there is a different calendar, I think that would be an important piece of information for us to have. Just, when does this actually need to be done? The second thing is, I thought we were asked to pick a number as part of that urgency. We couldn't go with the more generic set of information. I think that might have just been a misinterpretation of the X's. But I think that was part of it. And we tried to find a way to not pick both and essentially kind of go with the lowest common denominator. I think the other piece of information that we had was that there isn't a proposed model that would exceed 9. And so all of the models being considered were 9 or less. So we thought 9, and for a foreseeable future, that would work. So we thought 9 was the best. I will say, I think Councilor Wood made a great point. We didn't discuss or consider the fact that this could sort of skew maybe the center of power, and I think that's worth discussing as well. But maybe if I could just confirm, what is the timeline? What is the ask? Do we actually, is it recommended that we put in a number? And then the third thing is, do we actually have confidence that there is no number higher than 9?
And so, Councilor Moore, before somebody chimes in on that answer, I think that is my concern, that these answers should have happened in Rules and Procedures. You should have had that. And whether or not, there's just a lack of information or a lack of participation, it doesn't sound like that's the case. But I think maybe if there's, once new information is known, that both Attorney Rollins and Marilee Hunt participate in that meeting and get an invitation to that meeting to set those parameters for you. I certainly think no ill will of the subcommittee and the work that you've done. It's based on the knowledge, and some of that is changing pretty rapidly, and I think we all have to accept that. But I am quite concerned about the issues that are being raised by Attorney Rollins that were unnecessarily moving forward in an unknown without really the prompting to have to do that, because in fact, the entire state is in a similar position. There's going to be many towns and cities coming before the legislators asking for this to be moved through. And I think they understand that that's happening. But I'm going to just quickly defer to Marilee Hunt. It looks like she just wants to make a statement.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. All I was asking, or all I wish to ask, is if we could have Mr. Rollins at the subcommittee meeting when this is discussed. I think that would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm more than happy to be there. Just make sure when you guys are going to schedule it that someone sends me, whatever kind of invite you guys have, evites or because I don't get notices of all subcommittee meetings. So someone will just have to send that. If Josh is going to be the one doing it, that's fine. I would recommend maybe that you guys check in or someone check in with Merrill Lee probably before you schedule this on the agenda again, so that her and I can have a discussion and figure out if the state has even come back with anything yet. Obviously, we all want to work as expeditiously as possible, which I think is what the intent here was. I don't think anyone had bad intent. I think you all were trying to get this done so that we don't, fall behind, the 8 ball here. So I'm happy to be there. Absolutely.
We appreciate that. And I think it's important that your participation on the subcommittee, so we have the best guidance we can have. And I would say that again, to the subcommittee, if we have to pull an emergency meeting after your meeting to get this situated and voted, we do that. But Councilor Wood, additional comments?
Well, actually a question either to Attorney Rollins or Town Clerk. So are we expecting the charter change to take effect based on a special act only? Or are we expecting that the special act will bring the question back for a town-wide vote?
Well, I was going to leave that up to you, but my recommendation is that it be voted by you guys. I think if you're going to make it a ballot question, it could become very, very cumbersome and not likely to fit within
Right.
the law.
Right,
So
but then it would go to the state for a special act, and that would be the end of it. They would just assign the charter change.
There would be no caveat to the ordinance or the
Right.
charter change that said to be ratified by the voters. It would just be you guys vote it, and then it becomes a special act. Correct.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Councilor George.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to either the town attorney or the town clerk. So with all of these discussions, I guess I'm a little confused, and if I propose this timeline in general, maybe it'll help. At least I hope so. So this goes back to committee, rules and procedures. Basically, it's going to have to sit there until the town clerk gets the guidance on the districting, population, things of that nature. But even before rules and procedures can move on it, wouldn't the town council have to make the determination of what the council is going to be made up in regards to numbers? Because where I'm getting a little concerned is it's sounding like rules and procedures is going to make a recommendation on those numbers. I don't necessarily think that's the intent of the committee. I think the guidance has to come from the council, has to be packaged and presented to rules and procedures. It has to fit within rules and procedures, come back to the council for final ratification. Where I'm getting concerned is that rules and procedures is going to be responsible for coming up with the number and then recommending it to the council. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I would envision it. Is that right? Or am I reading this the wrong way?
No, I think from a procedural standpoint, you're not inaccurate in saying that, because what will happen is when Merrill Lee gets the map back, there's going to have to be a determination made by you all about what makes up what districts, right? Unless it's just a very clean math problem, which I hope to gosh it is. But if it isn't, you may have multiple districts making up a precinct, right? And you all have to put that forth as legislation to vote on, right? And based on what you come up with, that will dictate what that charter change is. So what you're saying is from a logical analysis perspective is absolutely right, right? So
yep.
That's
so I guess
right.
So I guess to Councilor Moore's question, we would, as a committee, just wait for the council to give us the numbers, plug them into what has been presented, us to look at it and make sure that procedurally it works, bring it back to the council, council approves, goes off to legislature. Am I correct on that?
Well, I think what should happen is probably when Marilee gets the information back, she should come before you as a discussion item as soon thereafter to explain to you what the proposed map might look like. And then someone needs to bring it forth as legislation and say, we're voting on this district and this district's going to make up precinct 1. Right? And so then that's how I envision that vote going. And then based on that, we're going to make a charter change based on that, right? That complies with whatever you all vote on that map.
Okay. So, and I don't mean to belabor this, I apologize. We send it back to committee. Basically, it's going to sit there until the council gives direction on the numbers.
I would say that makes the most sense. I think you have
Okay.
to figure out a definitive idea of what you're going to do before you start trying to amend the charter. That's my opinion.
So I think to President Rushton's statement, once we get everything that we need, the council has to move very quickly to
Yes.
establish what we feel is right, get it to committee. The
Yes.
committee's got to move fast. We've got to
Yes.
get it back to the council. Council's got to approve it. Then we have to send it off to the legislature. And I
Yes.
think everyone on the council, the town manager, the town attorney, everyone involved needs to be on the phone and
Yes.
emailing our legislatures to get this through
Yes.
so that we don't run into the same problems we ran in last time.
And-
Okay,
and
thank you.
I think it would even make sense after Marilee's able to report whatever she gets from the state, as quickly thereafter, even if it's a special meeting, call it so that you guys can vote the map as quickly as possible. And even if we have to have multiple special meetings, then that's what we have to do to keep this thing moving. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Attorney Rollins, just to follow up on that, could we have Councilor Gallagher's ordinances sit in rules and procedures, collect that information, and they could amend those and come back to the council, or would we have to
Yes.
draft a new legislation?
No, that's exactly what I'd recommend, because I think rules and procedures already has done some work on it. You all have already put it in their hands. I think, let's let them amend it as, they get more information.
Okay, I think that we've come to a good spot, and I certainly would entertain, if I understand, a motion to return it to rules and procedures.
Marilee still has a hand up.
I apologize. Marilee, go ahead.
I just want to clarify with all this, when Marilee gets the data and when Marilee tells us, we're talking about December. Okay? And by the end of December, we have to have this decision made. So we're not going to know the numbers and the precincts and the districts and everything until, you're really, really, really going to have to move fast, along with posting meetings with 48-hour notices to get this done and get it voted and get it up to the legislature. And you've got 2 legislators who are going to help you. And hopefully, maybe every other city and town in the Commonwealth is going to be doing this. But I think we're in a bit of a different situation than some of them. I don't really know. But some of them are much bigger and have more flexibility of putting things together. So I'm not in any way trying to tell you what to do. I just don't want to go without saying that if we don't get the numbers until November 30th, we still have to have this answer by the end of December, voted and cleared it with the legislature. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay, understood.
It makes me nervous. I'm sure it makes you all nervous too, but.
And then I guess I'm looking at the perspective is that anything can change at any moment, and maybe we get the data and get the information sooner than later. Things are fluid. And I believe that there's so many towns that are going to be in similar positions trying to do this work that it's going to be at the top of the state's agenda. That's my belief. I think we're worrying really about, maybe stuff we don't have to be worried too much. I could be wrong, but I think because we're not unique and it's not just a singular town trying to make this happen, I feel comfortable with the current plan. But I think it puts a little bit of onus on yourself and Attorney Rollins to be watching what's going on and letting us know right away.
Oh,
So we
believe
can
me,
take action.
watch it like a hawk because they're scared to death about this. If this doesn't happen, the LEDRC will indeed appoint a manager, and it will indeed cost the town $20,000 to have somebody, not us, make the decision. So that's where we get to. So I just want to make sure that that's all clear and that that's all out there.
Understood. So I
Okay,
believe
so
I mentioned.
I'll make a motion to send it back to rules and procedures.
Second it.
Okay.
Okay, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Thank you. 8 in favor, 0 against.
Okay, moving on to ordinance D FY 21-012. I just want to defer to Josh. I believe I understood that this was tabled by rules and procedures and should not be on the agenda.
It says it was approved. But it says it was approved. I'm going to make a motion. It gets sent back to committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a second to send it back. Any discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Thank you. 8 in favor, 0 against.
Moving on, old business, we have none. Moving on to new business, order 0 FY 22-009, acceptance of mitigation payment, defer to the town manager.
Motion to send to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Dutton, I'm sorry.
No, you are perfectly appropriate, but just as by way of short introduction, this is a payment from a 40B project as pursuant to a ZBA decision. The money is allocated and dedicated to improving public safety radio equipment.
Excellent.
Motion to send to Budget and Finance Committee.
Second.
Okay, I have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Thank you. 8 in favor, 0 against.
Thank you. Moving on, order 0 FY 22-010, transfer for downtown charrette and plan agreement. I'll defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, this is in front of you tonight in order to get it in the process. If the council decides to move forward with a downtown charrette, which for those that don't know, a charrette is essentially a workshop that invites all interested parties, citizens, business owners, counselors, members of boards and committees, to really dig down and take a look at what our downtown should be. Kind of picks up where the 2015 study left off and provides a little more clarity. So that's what this is. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, but I would suggest you go to Budget and Finance, and we can flesh it out a little bit more.
Thank you.
Motion to send to Budget and Finance Committee.
Have a second?
Second for discussion.
Sure. Council Wood.
Thanks. It's a transfer, so that's the appropriate place. But this is one of those things that, when we were talking about workshops earlier this year, our central square area is of great interest. We've already had a couple reports. We've already had a group called 2020 years ago and others. And I'm just wondering, if we need to hire yet another consultant to look into this, or maybe we should start off with a simpler process, a workshop amongst ourselves to find out what our strategy is before we start with, trying to figure out how to implement something that not all of us agree to. I'm not saying we won't find agreement. It's just you need to include a large portion of people, not just one or two counselors and a handful of citizens again. So I don't know if we could do that before we commit money or not. Otherwise, yeah, I'm fine with throwing this at budget and finance, but it won't get that type of discussion as a finance item to talk about the strategic importance of it.
I guess if you want, Mr. President, I could answer Councilor Wood. I do foresee the council holding a workshop session dedicated to two things. One is to, first half would be prioritizing the list that the council came up with at the last workshop session, and then move into a more robust discussion about Central Square. So this would happen before we ever brought this back to council for a vote.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, we have a second. Move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Thank you. 8 in favor, 0 against.
Excellent. Thank you. Moving on to citizens' comments. Are there any citizens here that wish to speak during citizens' comments? Marilee Hunt, you're up. And you're on mute, just so you know.
Okay, as if you haven't heard enough from me tonight, I'm going to be very brief on this. I want to thank you for all your discussion about the sidewalks. I thought it was great, and I truly appreciate that. And on that thought, I wonder if there are ever any times when the planning board is having some sort of fees waived. As Councilor Wood mentioned, there might be neighborhoods where, or things being built where we're not having sidewalks. And could we take any of that money, if there is money, could we take that money and transfer it into putting sidewalks or into repairing sidewalks that we want to have? That was just a thought. I also was very excited about Carlton's presentation on the Energy Committee. And I know that he's the only member of that committee, so it cannot meet. So this is just a general out there to everybody. Recruit some people to apply to the CAC and be on the Energy Committee. And as far as the weeds, and Councilor Wood, I believe, said putting chemicals on the weeds to kill them so they don't rot away the sidewalks. How about we use those fire sticks, or whenever I've seen the prisoners out using them before, and they kill it all with fire instead of putting more chemicals out in our atmosphere and all that sort of thing. Those are all my comments. Thank you very much for what I think was a very productive, if long, meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other citizens for citizens' comments? Dr. Hunt.
Can you hear me? I'm on my own computer now.
Yes, we can.
Touchdown. Thank you. I just want to reaffirm that as we look at the streets and that kind of thing, we need to consider those people that have disabilities and quite frankly, prioritize their ability to safely walk on the streets. So I think, the discussion was good, but I fear that there will be no actions taken. That's somewhat of a history. So I think we've also had a number of streets that have not been fixed according to Complete Streets policy. I don't know why, but I would look down the road to have, for example, Aldrich Road was repaved, but no street, no sidewalks, nothing on that very busy street. So I think I'm going to leave it. We need to address, from my management experience, the urgent and important. I think it's important to fix the sidewalks from the place where people with disabilities live. And I think it's urgent that we do that. We have a citizen who has been injured many times, and she's finally fed up with her situation. And I think the town owes it to those people to prioritize their needs. End of statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other citizens for citizen comments?
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
Again,
Mr.
Vernon
Domingo.
Domingo here, 36 Saddle Drive, Bridgewater. I'm just listening to the meeting, and I want to applaud and thank councilors for approving the flag flying code. I think this is the right step. It broadens input into agreeing on the symbols that we think represent our town. And I feel very good about this. So democratizing these issues and having us all have some input is really a good way to go, so that Bridgewater citizens feel that this is a town that is our town, in effect, as citizens here. So thank you very much that you have approved that unanimously.
Thank you. Any other citizens for citizen comments? Ms. Hunt.
I want to thank you all for having me here tonight. I can't stress enough, I'm not doing this just for me. There are 2 people on Spring Street that are in motorized wheelchairs. If those motorized wheelchairs ever get stuck in one of those crevices, I don't even want to think about what would happen. There are also other medical devices on that street. And there are walkers, joggers, older people that are jogging or walking. It's not just for me. I just can't keep falling. I said it before. I want to live to see my grandchildren grow up. But thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments tonight.
Thank you.
Any other citizens for citizens comments? Do not see any. I'm going to move next to council comments. Councilor George.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say that I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the Mitchell topping off ceremony. Mother Nature held off and gave us a really nice day. I had not seen, other than the pictures that were posted, I had not seen the structure as it stands today. It is impressive. It's going to be something that I think, the town of Bridgewater is going to, and the school district's going to be very proud of. It was nice to see the invitation list. It was across the board. You had state dignitaries, you had local, you had even students from BR, which I thought was really nice for the committee. And I believe it was Principal Watson who invited them as well. So to the committee that put that together, they did a great job, and I'm very much looking forward to the completion of that project. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. Another issue that's out there for us that we'll have, I'm sure, a spirited debate over is the ordinance that Councilor Souza and I sponsor that is now in rules and procedures regarding the ban of 1 millimeter nip bottles in the town of Bridgewater. I wanted to give all of you an update tonight that I organized and had a meeting with all of the package store owners in Bridgewater last Thursday. And I discussed with them an alternative solution that I proposed to them of what we can do to avoid a vote on banning the nips. And we went back and forth on a proposal that I had for them. And I have come to an agreement in principle with them on an alternative solution on this nip problem, the litter that we have in the town of Bridgewater. So when the order comes back from committee and we begin the discussion of that, I will go over in detail with all of you what we have somewhat agreed on, with some minor details to be ironed out. But if any of you have any questions and want to go over it with me, you can give me a call personally and I'll tell you what we have agreed on. But I think it's important that a resolution is out there to avoid any financial impact on the package store owners, and something that I do think that those that want the ban can at least give a chance for this to take place and then move forward. So I hope that in September we have that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Chase.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just quickly, I think that it was a very productive meeting that we've had this evening on a number of fronts. I think certainly the having the presence and the discussion from Jacqueline Hunt and the assistance of Mary Lee Hunt and Mr. Frimm, and of course, Councilor Columbotus on the sidewalk issue has been very important and I think a long overdue topic for our discussion. And I thank everyone involved for bringing that matter forward. As well, I think that we had a very vigorous and I think personally very informative discussion with respect to the re-precincting issue. Maybe it wasn't intended that it would be so far reaching tonight at the meeting, but nonetheless, it was I think a very helpful discussion that we had overall. And certainly I thank everyone for their support of the flag ordinance. I feel very happy that that's received really such a vigorous endorsement from the council and from the public. And I look forward to our implementation of that law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council Souza.
Yes, touch a little bit on the NIP thing that Dennis just did. During that hearing, we had a number of people talking, and one of the bigger subjects that changed over to was trash. Trash on our streets from the fast food industry. Somebody sent me something, then it was an article in the Boston Globe saying that Maine had passed a state ordinance putting a stipend on all those types of businesses for a fee, and that fee would go to cleaning the streets. Now, why did I bring that up? Because it also says that our state rep, okay, Angelo D'Amelio, he and 26 other reps have taken that bill or a similar bill and now have it at the state legislation. We also know, I was told by I talked to all the liquor store owners myself, one-on-one. I didn't know there was going to be a general meeting. But what one of them said was their association said within 2 weeks, the state said they were going to have a hearing on the bottle bill. So we think those things are going to be coming together. Hopefully they do, okay? And that will help with the trash. And one of the other questions that came up, and I knew the answer, but it just didn't come to mind quick enough, was what happens if we're cleaning the street or I go out into my front yard and I find a needle on the ground, okay? That happened to me last fall. I had no idea what to do, so I called the police department. They said, number one, don't touch it. Number two, we will be there. And very quickly, the cruiser pulled up. The officer got out. He had a container and he put gloves on and he had me point to where it was. So if you see one, you're going to be there to show him where it is. He picked it up, put it in the container, put his gloves in the container and said, now this goes back to the station and gets properly disposed of. So nobody gets hurt. So for the people who are asking about the guy, there was one person who asked about the needle. That's how we handle it. Trash, hopefully the legislature is working on something. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Moore.
Yeah, first off, I guess I wanted to say thank you to Dr. Hunt for his update. It's exciting and I appreciate the push to get that through. And also for me personally, seeing the data that shows the value of that light investment was exciting too. So thank you. I think specific to the NIPS question, I would encourage everyone who didn't see that meeting to maybe go back and watch it. I had done some research that I presented in there, and if people have seen other research, I'd be curious to see it. So one, maybe just a few things to highlight from that. There was a big study recently on litter in the US. And that study found that 7 out of every 1,000 pieces of trash is a NIPS bottle. Like I said in there, that doesn't mean it's not an issue. I'm not saying it's not an issue. But my concern is if we go after those 7 and we meet with the liquor store owners and tell them that they now have to fund that, we lose potentially their partnership to go after the other 993 pieces of litter. And so my hope is in committee and through conversations, and I'm eager to hear Councillor Gallagher's proposal. It sounds exciting. But my hope is we find a solution that helps us address a bigger part of that litter problem with the energy that we have right now. The other thing, just quick statement, many people emailed me a statistic about Falmouth that I think it said something like 35% of those, the litter there was NIPS. I did look into that statistic. I just want to call out, they didn't actually do a full litter survey. They picked up litter that they were targeting. So they left litter out like cigarette butts and paper, etc. So I just want to caution people when you hear statistics, kind of dig into that a little bit. Again, doesn't mean NIPS aren't a problem, they are. But I would just caution about the use of some data that might not be accurate. So for me, I'm excited to continue the discussion. I appreciate all the thoughts from the group. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Moore. Councilor Wood.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief tonight. So one of the things that I've always been most interested in on the council level is the budget process. And the budget process, as you know, starts with typically a resolution that speaks to how the revenues will be generated and what the town manager and finance director should expect how to partition those. One of the important pieces in that budget resolution, which is always negotiated each year, is what percentage will be set aside with the attempt to get money into capital planning. That's an important key piece to the overall strategy of the resolution, so that 98 or so percent goes to operation, but that we might expect some free cash based on like a soft year of snow or something the state's done or other revenue sources that exceed expectations. And those additional revenues follow our capital planning policy and fund a number of different accounts, some of which we talked about tonight, which is if a sidewalk is going to be repaired or built, typically some of that money comes from Chapter 90, and some of that money might come out of capital planning as we define it. And yet some of that money, as the town manager defined, might come from a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion. I hear a number of people talking about taxes already. And if people are wondering why I continue to chase after the marijuana retail money, it's because it will easily add $2,000 or $3,000 or more $1,000 into the process. And then those excess funds end up in capital planning, and the capital planning gets to use for things like sidewalk repair and other plans that we have. And that's why I stay on track with that. It's part of the overall puzzle. I would prefer not to ignore and avoid an easy tax and go back to the homeowners for a debt exclusion for repairs to sidewalks and streets. I'm not sure how effective that's going to be as an approach. We might have to stretch out some of these repairs. I do really appreciate Ms. Jacqueline Hunt's, speaking before us today. It shows, another citizen telling a story about, some of the deficiencies in Bridgewater. The sidewalks, are showing grass. I agree with, maybe herbicide isn't the best, but I don't want to put blowtorches in the hands of too many people because you can do a lot of damage with those, but that's another approach. Vinegar is another approach, but homeowners need to take an active participation in front of their house also. But overall, to me, it's the money puzzle is a big puzzle, has many moving parts. It's important to tap all the resources. And so whenever someone asks me, why am I sticking on this retail taxes, that's why. It's part of the overall project. And if you look at a town like Franklin, Franklin is expecting about $9.1 million in mitigation each and every year for the next several years, which means that they're expecting over $1 million in retail sales tax to come into the town. And Bridgewater's missing that, and so we would have to tap other sources to do these important repairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wood. Councilor Columbotus. Is he even here? Okay, I do not see him. And I don't have any comments this evening, so we have no executive session. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood.
Yes.
Thank you. 7 in favor, 0 against.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Have a good
Everyone.
week.